at the last one. So I'm recording this now. So yeah, you know, no problem if you haven't started yet. I don't think anybody's really started it yet, and I won't release the next unit until next week on Monday. I think a lot of people haven't really started this assignment yet, which is fine. You know, this is not that difficult of an assignment. Next week, we'll start to get into typography and talking about CSS a little bit. So next week, we'll start to get into a little bit more coding. This is kind of, you know, this assignment with the banners is kind of like the last kind of focus that I'm really putting on Photoshop and using Photoshop in different ways. But you'll always be using Photoshop throughout the class. It's just, this is like the opportunity to really kind of figure out Photoshop if you haven't really used Photoshop that often. So one of the things I wanted to talk about was some other techniques for making these banners. And one of the students had an issue with the banners because he was saying that whenever he creates a banner using the cropping technique, you crop it out, but then it scales up the artwork and your artwork becomes pixelated. And he didn't want the artwork to be pixelated. And that's kind of one of the unfortunate parts of using the crop tool. So if I go into my layers here, and the first thing, I just got to remind you, if you are using the crop tool, and if you have an artboard, which you probably will because by default, the first time you open up Photoshop, it creates an artboard for you automatically. But if you use the crop tool on an artboard, so I'm going to use the crop tool here, it doesn't do anything. And the reason is because the artboard itself is actually kind of acting like a crop already. And you'll see that in this kind of example that I'm going to show you. So what you need to do is go into that artboard and make sure you ungroup it. And then once you ungroup it, then you can use the crop tool. So I have the crop tool here, and I'm going to show you what he was kind of having his issue with. So I have it set at 600 by 600. So let's say that's one, I think it is one of your sizes. So let's say I find something interesting, like I like this image here. So I'm going to crop her, and let's see. Let me hide, I need to hide my controls here. Okay. Oops, sorry. So I'm gonna, and I totally switched out of Photoshop. Oh my gosh, I think Photoshop crashed right when I was talking about what I was gonna do. Okay. Give it 1 second, I have to restart Photoshop. Okay. So let me go back into, okay. Yes, Photoshop crashed. Okay, I know that. So let me go back into that artboard that I was talking about, the mood board that I was talking about. Okay, here's the mood board, and let me just clean up the workspace. So I'm going to reset this. Okay, so I'm going to do what I just did all over again. So I'm back in that mood board, and I'm going to right click on the artboard and ungroup it, and then go into my crop tool, and now it works. So now I can crop, and I'm going to go back into the settings for the crop tool in the control bar on top and change it to width times height times resolution, and now it's at 600 by 600. So let's say I like, you guys see my screen, right? I just want to make sure. So, yes. Okay, so let's say I want to crop out this particular area here. And what you notice about the crop tool is it's set at 600 by 600, but when I do change it, you see how the width and height are changing as I scale that up and down. So I went from 600 to 600, let's say, to capture her in the crop board. And now I'm at like 166 by 66. So it's greatly reducing the size of the image. But now that I've done that, I can double click, and then the crop tool actually goes back and reverts to 600 by 600. But what that means is it's scaling up that little tiny portion, and it's adding pixels now, because I had 600 by 600 pixels, and well, I had 200 by 200 pixels, and it scaled it up to that 600 by 600 size. So it's adding 400 by 400 pixels. And when you add pixels, you're basically lowering the resolution, because the computer is trying to predict where to add the pixels, and then you get this like fuzzy blurred out image, right? So maybe some of you have experienced this as you're working with this cropping method. And the only reason I introduced the cropping method first is because it's like the easiest way to create the banners quickly. But if you are going to scale things in a way where you're cropping on a small area, it is going to cause some resolution issues with the image. So there's a couple other techniques, so there's, the one other technique is you could go to File, you could go to New, and you could just go ahead and create your individual banners as separate files. So I could create a 600 by 600 file here, and you can actually name that and make it a preset. So every time you make this type of banner, let's say you're doing like Instagram posts like all the time, you can just set it by default. So 600 by 600 banner, and then it's always going to be here as a save default. But I'm going to create that. So I have a new document, and then what you can do is you can just go to Arrange and say to up vertical. And now I have, now I have my 600 by 600 banner on the left side, my mood board on the right side. And if I go into the mood board, now I can grab elements. So I can grab this element here. Let me go into my move tool. I can grab, like, let's say I wanted to use her. So I'm going to grab her, drag it into the mood board here, and then I can scale it up here. Or what I could also do too is, if I'm happy, let's say, with the size, I can maybe set it at a certain size. And then you're just dragging from one side with the mood board to the artboard side. And so you're creating each banner individually. So that's one of the ways to do it. But that could be like very time consuming. And plus you're adding all these extra files. You're creating like 4 additional files for 4 additional banners. So if you want to do it that way, that's fine. And you basically are just dragging from your layers. You go to one document, find the layer that you want to drag over, and just hover and drag on top of the other document, and there it is. So you're just doing that. Let me go back into the mood board that I had there. And another way to do it, though, and this is actually kind of like the preferred way of doing it, is to create multiple artboards within the file. So what I'm going to do now is go back to all these layers here, and I'm going to select all of them, and I'm going to group them. Well, actually, no, I'm not going to group them. I'm just going to select all of them. I'm going to right click, and I'm going to say artboard from layers, and I'm going to hit OK. So now I have an artboard again, but this time I'm going to use multiple artboards and kind of set it up so I have all my artboards set, so I can just drag from one artboard to the next. So the way you do that is underneath your move tool, click on that, and there's an artboard tool, or you can hit Shift V. So Shift V is toggling from your move tool to your artboard tool. And okay, so now I have the artboard tool, and what I'm going to do is just create my artboards for each mood board. So the way you do this is first you can create your artboard, and then you can go up in here and change the dimensions. So I'm going to make this one 600 by 600. And then I'm going to create another one. And I forget what the sizes are for the assignment. So I'm just going to kind of guess a little bit here. So I have that one. And let's say I had another one that was like this. So now I have my, what are going to be my 4 banners. You can actually go in here and change the names of the banners or the artboards to what they should be. So I think for the assignment, I said, name them based on the size. So 600 by 600, and then underscore, I'll just say for now, banner 1. And I'm just, let's see, I'll look up here. This is 1450. I'm going to round it up. So let's say this is 1450 by 400. Banner 2. And this one is the skyscraper, where it's taller than it is wide. So this one's 454 by, I'm just going to round it up to 1500, call it banner 3. And this one is 930 by 600, and that's banner 4. So now I have all of my banners set in one Photoshop document. And then what you can do at this point is you can just drag. First you duplicate, and then you can drag it over. So let's say I want to concentrate on the vase, for example. So I'll select the vase. To duplicate, create a duplicate layer, you drag that layer onto the little new layer icon, or you can hit Control or Command J. So my preferred way is Control or Command J. Let me do this too. Hold on one second. I have this thing that will let me show. I have a little program that will let me show keyboard shortcuts. I want to do this because I always talk about the keyboard shortcuts, and I want to show it here. Let's see. No. Did this work? I have keyboard shortcuts somewhere. I just can't see them. They're on a screen somewhere. I don't know. Okay, I'm not gonna worry about that. Let me bring everything back. So and I lost a couple artboards here. Yeah. So here, I got to recreate a couple of those artboards. So, okay. So I accidentally hit undo a couple times. So yeah, so let me just go through the process then. So you can create a duplicate by dragging onto the new layer or hitting Command Control J. And then you can just drag this up, and you can do it 2 ways. You can drag it right into the artboard like this, and that should work. I guess it doesn't like it like that. Let's see. Okay, so there's 2 ways to do it. So first way, you create the duplicate, and then you drag it into the artboard itself in the layers. So if I want to drag this into artboard 2, it's an artboard too. Or what you can do is you can option drag from one artboard to the next. So if I click on this vase here, I can option click and drag it into the other artboard. So it's like really fast, you know, so there it is in my other artboard. And then one good tip to remember is when you're dragging things out and you want to adjust things right away, turn on the show transform controls in your control bar. And that way you can instantly scale it up very quickly. So if you need to scale things and adjust things, it's really fast. And then you can, you know, just quickly click on something else. If that's not turned on, if you turn it off, you can select things, but that option, when it's turned off, you don't have the corners with the little squares to scale things up. Then you have to hit Command T, and then you are using the transform command. But I prefer to just always have show transform controls turned on. So that just makes it so much easier. Somebody was saying it took them a year to figure out how to transform something because they didn't know where that was at. And that's where you can find it right in there. So this method, super fast to create your mood boards when you have these multiple artboards, but it's a little bit more advanced in terms of being a technique. But does everybody kind of understand that? Are you guys familiar with using artboards? Have you ever used it like this?
No, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's so much easier. And so the other thing that's really nice about doing it like this is that there's also that technique where I can name these as PNG, and I'll automatically save each artboard as a PNG file when I go into File, Generate Image Assets. So that's another great thing about it. So let me go back and just, that's already PNG. I would have to change that name. The base, you know, the names have to be different so they don't override each other. But if you name your artboard layers with that file extension, it's going to be really easy to output these using that generate technique.
So this sort of like makes Photoshop have some of the capabilities of InDesign in a way, right?
Well, yeah, it's giving
Not
you
exactly, but kind of.
right. Yeah, InDesign has a it's something called liquid layout. You know, if you've heard of liquid layout. So in InDesign, you can create pages in the same document at different sizes. So if you're doing like an ad campaign, create your business card, your flyer, all within one InDesign document in the page.
That's nice, yeah.
No, yeah, but this is kind of, in a sense, equivalent to that, where each artboard is a page. And Illustrator does the same thing now.
Right, yeah.
So is this all in one Photoshop file?
Yeah, so now you're working in just one Photoshop file. And what's nice about it is you have more control, especially with like scaling. So you can kind of figure out at what point the resolution gets bad with the scaling. And plus it's good to see all the banners all together, because then you can really kind of get a good feel for like design consistency throughout the whole project. You know, if you want banners to be placed consistently, you know, for the wider banners, you know, you always have the main image to the right, then you can consistently do that. You know, that works out really well. Or you can kind of look at things and say like, you know what, this has more space around it in this banner, so I probably want to do the same thing with this one. You know, even though this artboard here is not as tall. So yeah, there's some nice things about this. So something else you can do, in addition to doing this technique with the artboards, is you can start to use your library feature in Photoshop. And I don't know if have you used the library feature before in any Creative Cloud tool
No.
software? Because this is
No.
great, and it makes things really easy. It kind of, in a sense, is the third technique to bring in the artwork without having to create duplicates. So if I go to Window and I go to Libraries, it's going to bring up this library window. And the first time you bring it up, there might be a circle with a plus sign if you haven't added anything yet. But and something is okay. And so what you can do here is just go ahead and create a new library. And usually I do it for the project that I'm doing. So yeah, I just call this one banner ad campaign, hit create. So yeah, the first time you create a library, you get this circle with a plus sign. And basically that's just their way of saying, hey, add something to me. So I'm gonna throw that vase in there. And in fact, I'll probably go into my artboard and go into my layers and just grab a bunch of stuff. And let's see. Oops. Hold on one second. I'm gonna close my garage door because I got a car. So, okay, so I'm gonna grab a bunch of different things. You just drag them right to the library. That kind of didn't do what I wanted because it grabbed it all together. So I guess you have to grab things individually. But here I'm grabbing all these things individually and just kind of filling up the library. And the other thing that's nice is to select colors as well. So if you have a bunch of colors, what you can do is use your eyedropper tool, hit I, select the color, and then once you have the color selected, go into this plus sign and it should let me add there should be a little drop down that pops down. I don't see it happening for some reason. Let's see here. So it should let me add, there you go. I don't know why it was so slow. So you can also add your colors and they'll appear up here. So if you have this color palette, use your eyedropper tool, go through each of your color palettes and then go down here. It's acting really slow. And you add each one in there. And then that way they're just there. And oops, I did that one twice. You know, and it's all set. And this works good for your fonts as well. So now I have my color palette set in the library. And so you can kind of use this to your advantage to just drag into an artboard. You know, and then you can kind of control and design things a lot faster this way. So libraries are really good. And what's cool about the library is once you save it, it's going to appear for all of your other applications. So like Illustrator and InDesign is going to remember this banner ad campaign. So if it's like for a really big campaign, you can repurpose this pretty easily. Any questions about that? So it's pretty simple. You just create the library, you drag it into the library, and then you can just drag these things out as you're working. And add them to your other artboards like that. So I love using libraries. I have tons of libraries set. So any questions about that? So like, you know, if you want to like start to think about, oh, what I want to experiment with some background colors, let's say, you know, you can just you just click on the swatch here and it appears in your foreground and background colors. If you hit X, they swap. So you can swap them by hitting X. Foreground and background can be switched by hitting the X key on your keyboard. But, you know, here too, it's a quick way. Go back into layers and go into these artboards. See, go into like this one here. And this one. You know, if you want to start to think about adding a background, you can, what you do is you create a selection with the selection tool or the rectangular marquee tool, which is the second tool in the tool palette. And if you have a color set as your foreground, you can hit Option. I have to be on a layer first. So what I'm going to do is create a new layer within Artboard 5 here. And then hit Option, Delete, and then I can start to think about filling these things up with a background color. So the last thing I want to show you is, as you're working on these different things, you may not want to have one of your images with a background. Maybe I just want the vase all by itself. So it's good to know how to mask something. You know, as you're working on your web pages, there's going to be techniques where in HTML, we can actually take PNG files with transparency and create layers and actually animate things going back and forth using CSS. So we can actually use CSS for animation. But the key is to have things that have backgrounds that are transparent. And so you're going to want to have to mask things occasionally. Photoshop has this great new tool. So third tool down, and actually fourth tool down with your, there's a magic wand tool here, and it's called Object Selection Tool. Has anybody tried this yet? Has anybody heard of this Object Selection Tool?
Yes, but I haven't tried it yet.
Pretty cool because it's actually using artificial intelligence to kind of determine the boundary of a shape. So you just go into this Object Selection Tool, and I'll go to my base layer on Artboard 5, and I'll just kind of select around it. You left click, make a square selection, and then you let go, and you give it a couple seconds, and let it think, and it actually did a pretty good job of getting the boundary of that vase. If you want to mask out the vase, what you do is you're on that layer and you go all the way down to your layers palette, and there's a little icon, looks like a little circle in a rectangle. Click on that and it masked it out. So now you can get rid of the background of something. You see how it wasn't perfect, where it missed some detail? Well, there's another tool in here. If you go back to that Object Selection Tool and go to the Quick Selection Tool, click on that. And what that can do is, if you just drag over a little bit and actually, and you have to hit the Shift key, it adds to the selection, but you gotta kind of be careful or it might add too much. And you can make that, the circle that kind of controls the selection, you can make it bigger or smaller by hitting the left and right bracket keys on your keyboard. And then hit Shift and kind of just drag. It kind of did it too much. So if it does it too much, you can hit Option and it eats away. And then you kind of go back and forth, and eventually it kind of learns the selection. So now I got that side of the vase, and I shift over this one. And now I got the other side, and then I go back to that little icon in the layers palette with the masking, and it did a much better job. So if you want to get rid of backgrounds, so then you can really start to combine different elements like, you know, Mad Max with the base on top of it, let's say. You can do that. So it doesn't really read too well. So I probably want to go to this layer, and I'm giving you like a lot of tips now. So this is a lot of information, but with something like that, if you want the base to read better, I'll go into my gradient tool. And in the control bar, you have this gradient, and you have all these options when you click down on the little downward arrow. And I'll just pick something. I'll go into basics and pick this black and white. And I'll drag out a gradient. And then I can use a blend mode to kind of blend that in. So now it reads a little better. So the blend mode is here in your layers, and I pick multiply. And so it reads better with that. So if you want to get into really, you know, really working these banners to a high degree, you can. I'm not asking for that. I'm just showing you this as another technique for the banners itself. So that's something you can do. And then the final thing I asked for was just to add text representing what that banner is. So I think I had this like, you know, I don't know. I came up with I think it was Timeless Cosplay that I was going with.
It was.
It's Coldplay.
Yeah, Timeless. I was thinking of, at the moment, something different. So just add some text to represent that. Again, this doesn't read too well, so I probably want a better font. Or I can use that technique that I just did with the gradient, or I think I mentioned in the last meeting that we had is a technique called ghosting. So you go into your shape tool, at the bottom here, pick this rectangle, keep it set at shape, go below the type layer, actually pick a color for it first. So pick like a white, let's say. And then you create a rectangle here. Oh, I thought I picked white. So I'm going to go back into that fill and change it. And then you go into the layer and you just lower the opacity a little bit. So this technique, they call it ghosting when you want to have something with the background showing through a little bit, you know, so it just reads better as a banner. So any questions? That was like a ton of stuff to give you guys. So you can stick with cropping, you know what I mean? You're not getting graded on the quality of the banners itself. It's more of an exercise to get you used to Photoshop even more and to, you know, help you develop the content, right? Like part of the class is you need to develop your content. You just can't code it, everything. So there's that content part, which is important. So yeah, any questions?
We have to have more than one picture in the banner.
No, I mean, like here, you don't have to.
Okay.
You know, it's kind of like the idea with this, and what I'll do here is actually I'll pull this type into that banner. And I'll pull the ghosted background in there too. Oops. Okay. Yeah, the whole idea is to just kind of explore, really. Yeah, I want the banners to be clear in the design, but in terms of like the number of things that you have set in those banners, no, it doesn't matter. Like this is fine, just type on top of the banner is fine. Yeah, so if you crop them, you'll crop them, add type, and then save them. Or if you do the artboard technique, you'll create 4 banners in the document and then drag from the mood board into each of the banners. Drag artwork, kind of experiment in different ways. So yeah, any questions then about this whole technique? What do you think? Is this too complicated? You can be honest with me.
No. But I already know Photoshop a little bit, so I don't know.
Yeah, it's good to learn Photoshop.
Yeah, it is.
Photoshop is your gateway. It's the gateway drug of CG software. So once you learn Photoshop, you kind of learn so many other things. Because one of the things we will be doing is doing animation for animated GIFs in Photoshop. And for example, like animated GIFs, you have a timeline. And it's actually pretty cool. You got 2 options. You got video and you got frame by frame. So you can do it like a video style timeline, which is very similar to using like Adobe Premiere, which is what I make all my videos in. Or you can do this create frame animation as well. So there's actually two different types of video tools within that timeline. And that's a nice feature. So for animated GIFs though, like this is one of the really only ways to do it. We'll go through some techniques where you can actually pull a video from the web and turn it into a frame by frame animated GIF. So like all the goofy GIF memes you see like on Giphy. You ever see stuff on Giphy? It's like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, or what was the show? Was it the Fresh Prince of LA? Or just
Bel-Air.
Yeah, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Yeah.
Was it Bel-Air? Okay. So if you want like Will Smith doing a dance, you can grab that footage and turn it into a GIF and throw it on Giphy. Like everybody knows what Giphy is, right?
No.
Like Giphy is for like your iPhone when you want to send an animated GIF. I think Giphy is one of the options. Let me just segue real quick. Here's Giphy. Giphy is like the social network of GIF creation. So there is Devo. Is that Devo? I don't think that's Devo, but anyways. So this is Giphy, right? And so these look like video clips, but they're really video clips that have been brought into Photoshop and processed through the timeline. And there's probably other tools out there that can do these kinds of things. But what's cool about the GIF is that it's so lightweight. You can have all this information all at once happening. And plus it's the one way to create your meme if you want to start to create some sort of memes. Do you guys make any memes out there? Any meme creators?
Rarely.
Interesting.
Like
Dave's
only
one, but he's on his phone.
I think James does, right? James likes to create the memes for Discord. So yeah, there's all, like I was saying, like Photoshop is kind of like the gateway into so many other things. And from the web design perspective, the whole act of right-clicking on this and copying the CSS is great because it makes you learn what the CSS is for something. I'll go back in here. I'm just going to change these into, I messed up the naming earlier because that's as the last thing I wanted to do that export process. And there's another process here too I want to show you with exporting, which makes the Artboard technique really efficient for web production. And let me just rename these as the PNGs real quick because I lost the names earlier. I'm just kind of making up sizes, so I'm doing this quickly. Okay, so So all these artboards are named, and you can see the names. So there's my 600 by 600 banner. So now they're correctly labeled too, which makes it really easy. You know, another, just real quick, another cool thing about artboards is if you're using the artboard tool and you want to quickly duplicate artboards so you can create variations, you can option click on the name and drag it out, and now I have a duplicate artboard. So this gets really like heavy. You know, it's like you can have a ton of artboards in here if you really want to like explore a lot in your design process. So when I'm ready to export, there is this generate process where you just hit save and it generated all of my PNG files. They do have to be properly named, but if I go into my desktop and
Untitled one, yeah.
And did you see them actually, or?
I thought I did. It said Untitled 1 assets, right? Yeah, go down. Yeah.
Oh,
Was that?
well, this is from yesterday, so you're not seeing the correct ones.
Oh, okay.
You know what I have to do? I have to save this. So the key to doing this is to save your main Photoshop file. So if I save this Photoshop file, to my desktop, and I'll create a folder for it. I'll just call it banner project. Hit create, and then hit save. So now I have all of my assets from the mood board saved, and then I'll hit save one more time, and I'll double check to make sure generate is checked, and it is. So now if I go into my desktop here and then go back to the desktop, there's the banner project folder that I just created. Open it up, there's my mood board. So that's the kind of like the start of the whole project, right? And then I can go into mood board assets, double click, and wow, I got a ton of stuff in here. You know why I have so many things in here? Can somebody tell me why? So it generated not only artboards, but my layers.
Library? Oh.
No, it took, so here's my banners, you know, the banners that I named out with the sizes. So everything looks right there. And then I have these individual banners here as well. I got one called Wire PNG. Well, if you go back into Photoshop and you go into my layers, I have layers named with file formats as well, which is actually kind of nice if you want to get really creative with naming things and really efficient. Anything that has that name, including layers individually within artboards, and the artboards are going to be exported using that generate. So I have all of these things that are now PNG files, which can be utilized in a project if I was thinking like that. The other way to do it is just to go to export and go to export as. And then in the export as dialog, what you're going to see is on the left side here are basically my artboards that were saved as banners. So I don't have all those extra layers with those file extensions. I only have the artboards. So when you go into an export as, it's basically just looking for artboards, and it's looking at those artboards and seeing those artboards as individual files. Another feature in here though is I have all these banners, let's say at this size. But let's say I wanted to have another set for whatever reason. Let's say for like mobile, I needed to generate a set of even smaller banners. You can hit this plus symbol here, and then if you want them at half size, you can select that. So it's going to give you a range. And then when I go to export, and I'll go to export, I'll create a whole new folder inside the banner project. This time I'll call it images, because that's really what you want to call your folder when you're creating your actual site. And just click on that. and now it's going through its process. And now when I go into that folder, let's see, I thought I saved that. I don't know where that folder went. Oh, here it is. I didn't do it inside the banner project. I did it outside, but that's okay. But here are the full range of banners. So I have my normal size banners, and then anything that has an @.5 is the scaled down version. So export as is what you want to use if you don't want to use image generate, and if you have artboards, and it makes it really convenient. So it's a really nice tool to use. So just remember, export as is going to be that place where you can export multiple artboards all at once. There's a legacy save for web here. If you look at that one, it only does one at a time. So, and it doesn't work with artboards either. So that's why it's the legacy version. So once they introduced the artboard feature, it was really meant as like a workflow efficiency process for web development, really. There's a whole history to Photoshop. You know, there was another program when the web was taking off, and it was called Image Ready. So Photoshop had this other program dedicated to just image creation. And I'm looking, because I actually have this old book from like 1997 that was all about Image Ready. But they kind of combine things. There's another program called Fireworks by a company called Macromedia, the makers of Flash. And they were just like these big programs, and the only purpose of the program was to generate images for the web. So they're no longer really necessary because everything's kind of built into Photoshop. So yeah, so those are some other techniques. There's a bunch of stuff in there for you guys to use for the banner project if you want to. What do you think? You think you'll use them? Use these other techniques?
Yeah, we try
What I'll
it.
do is I like to edit down the video, so I'll try to edit them in sections. So, you know, we talk about artboards. We've talked about using the object selection for masking, which is really great. You know, talk about making the type read, so adding a shape background or a gradient. So those are all of these techniques. So I'll really try to set them up in the video after this class. So yeah, so do you have any other questions about the banner creation or using Photoshop?
So is this like what they do for, you know, when you go on a website and you see the scrolling pictures going by?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's a good point.
Line, or is that what they use? Or
Yeah, in fact, now that you mentioned that, most websites have that feature now. And that's called a carousel. And we'll learn about this when we get into Bootstrap. So here's like, this is the company that I work for during the day, I guess. And time has no meaning now, but so this is called a carousel, and you have basically 4 banners within the carousel. And a great way to develop those banners would be through this process of just having the artboards laid out so you can see everything. So yeah, that's a good point. Most websites have, a lot of websites have a carousel. And that's what it's, carousel gallery, scroller.
so we're gonna learn that, how to do that too?
Yeah, we'll learn it in Bootstrap.
Oh, okay.
So when we talk about halfway into the term, we start to get into, after you learn more about CSS, Bootstrap is a framework that is basically a bunch of preset CSS modules. So you don't need to do all the CSS. What you can do is use Bootstrap, and Bootstrap has all this code already set. You just need to know some of the codes, and I'll go to Bootstrap. And this is Bootstrap, so we'll go through this, but there's all these components, preset things you can do with Bootstrap that's kind of like baked in already, like nav bars. You know, so here's like a nav bar that's already set with the drop downs. Carousel, where is that? Carousel is right here. So we'll make a carousel using this. So that's what I just showed you. You know, this is just giving you like the wireframe of the carousel. You know, you have these indicators down below that show you what one you're on. And here's the code, but you just take the code, and then there's all these keywords associated with the style sheets that you just used to indicate what your carousel is. Then you have this one with captions. So yeah, we'll do all of that. You know, there's all these tools. There's a tool called, if you don't use Bootstrap, there's plenty of tools out there, and one's called Master Slider. Oops. Here's this Master Slider. We have a bunch of templates in here. So these are all different types of preset carousels, different things. So if you look at this one, this is a parallax carousel. So the type kind of moves and the image kind of moves in relationship to the previous one. So there is this kind of sense of movement. So yeah, there's all these different tools for that. But you can also just code it. You know, you don't need to even use the tools. It's not that, with CSS, it's actually not that difficult to create a carousel. It's almost in a way easier than going through a third party and learning how to utilize that system. Yeah, so anyways, so you got a lot of Photoshop techniques that you can use now. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to talk to in regards to this. And I think that's good. I think there's a lot of different ways to do it. So you got cropping, you got artboards, or you can save multiple versions, multiple files with each banner size if you want to. So those are some different techniques.
Can we ask you a question on the bracket?
Sure.
So when you say under P, you say provide a brief description. So
yeah, I just want to, in that paragraph tag, just describe what that banner is. So it can be something in the P tag where you say, you know, the following, you know, just describe it. Like this is a 600 by 600 banner for Instagram. Just use the P tag to give it a little bit of information.
okay, got it.
It can be whatever you want to say about it. Yeah, whatever you want to say. So let's see. I feel like there's other things on my mind that I want to talk about, but the last thing I do want to talk about is getting you guys ready for the next module, which is going to focus on typography and fonts and thinking about image and type at the same time. So the next assignment is really going to deal with designing 2 full web pages. And I won't go into all the details, but I do want to show you, let's see something real quick here. So, I gotta find, hold on 1 second. So I just want to talk about HTML real quick. Oh, I got a bunch of is it possible? Sorry, I got a bunch of comments here that people have been giving me. Oh, James asked, is it possible to use Sass in replacement of vanilla CSS? Like, yeah, so like Sass is a way to quickly customize CSS in different ways. So I could say yes. That's getting, we're not really going to get into Sass or that much at all, really. It's just, if you're new to CSS, then some of these other things can be a little overwhelming. So, well, that's something to talk about. But we'll talk more about that when we actually talk about CSS. But I do want to show you a little bit here. Let's see. So I just want to make sure that everybody's clear on like HTML real quick. So I have this document that I'll probably just throw into Discord. And a lot of it is repeat information. So, you know, your boilerplate, your various header tags are here. But I do want to talk just real quick. I kind of like this. I took it from one of the books that I have listed in the syllabus. I have to look at that book, but just looking at this just gives you a clear idea. Opening and closing tag. Almost all tags have an opening and closing tag, and the closing tag always has that /. The other thing to think about is tag and element. You'll hear those two words. They're essentially the same thing. So when somebody says a HTML element, it's the same as a tag. And we've gone through all of these tags in the in Canvas. These are all listed out individually. But I'll put this in Discord as like a resource. This is kind of breaking it down. The other thing I wanted to show you real quick. We'll talk more about relative and absolute links. But when you're working on your HTML for the banners, you'll be using relative links. So as long as you follow the code, and let me do this real quick. So just here in brackets, just created a new brackets file. I'm going to save this. Let's say this is part of my banner project. So I'll save it in the banner project folder. So index.html, it's important that you always save your file as a .html file, but your very first file, your home page, will always be index.html. So that's saved. Here's my boilerplate. And then this is, I just kind of doing this as a quick reminder for everybody. So to bring the images in, it's an image tag. You have SRC, and that's the attribute. The SRC is an attribute of the image tag, and it's green in brackets. So whenever you see something that's green, those are attributes. So your tags are blue in brackets, and the green word here is your attribute. So character set is the attribute of meta, lang is the attribute of HTML. So here I have SRC, which is the attribute of my image tag, and the SRC attribute is what points to the actual PNG file that you saved out. And here I saved it in this mood board folder. So your attribute is going to equal something. So it's always going to have the equal sign, like you see up here with language and care set. And that thing that it equals is going to be in quotes. So I like to just type my quote out here, And then if you have your images saved in a folder, which I'm saying you should call images, but for the last example, it was just called Artboard assets. Just click on the drop down that appears, because once you write out that source, if you do have that folder in the same directory, it's going to appear. And I'm just going to select one of these banners and then close out the tag and then hit save. And then when I click the lightning bolt in brackets, you know, there's that banner. So the banner had some white there, but there's the banner. But just remember, SRC has to equal that location. And this location is what you would call a relative location. An absolute location would point to an absolute location on the web, where something is always in the same spot. Relative means if I move that folder, that moodboard folder, this banner is always relative to the location of that folder. So I just wanted to keep you thinking about that. And I had something here. I think I passed it up real quick. Let me go back. And right here, attributes and elements. So in this example, my attribute is magenta. So it's just indicating the information that that tag needs in order to actually have that tag do what it's supposed to do. So the attribute actually is green. The tag is P, has no color coding, and the value is in magenta. So the value for the source tag for image is going to be the relative location of the image. And then let me, so this is kind of just kind of like a preview now for what's going to come with CSS. But once we want to really get into fonts and creating different font families, this is what CSS looks like. So for CSS, you have these two concepts. You have a selector and you have what's called the declaration. So the selector is your tag that this wants to point to in your HTML. And then your declaration is going to be what you want to style. So kind of remember that. We'll go over this in more detail, but I'm just giving you like a little preview. So CSS is basically showing the tag what to display. So all these tags here, the H1, H2, H3, are all going to be displayed in this Arial font and in this color. So with CSS, you can start to really modify all these things in the HTML. So you get into a lot of detail on what you can modify. I don't want to get into too much detail with this, but here, when I was talking earlier about the transparency of the PNGs, so you can actually use CSS to have more than one PNG stacked on top of each other. And then you can kind of do some really interesting things. This kind of shows you what that looks like. So it kind of gets a little more detailed, but we'll talk about all this later on. I just kind of wanted to remind you about the image tag and SRC, what you need to add for that in order to have those images appear. And kind of give you a preview, but I'll put this document into Discord, but it's also going to be part of module 4, which I'm going to release to you next week on Monday. So I want to have you focus on assignment 3 and not give you too much to think about with the next assignment, which is going to be more getting into more coding. So let's see, I got a bunch of messages. Yes. Oh, no, okay. Anyways, so that's all I really want to talk about tonight.
I have a question.
Sure.
On my index file, I named it HTML, but then when I go into Explorer and looked at it, and it's like it has like a Google Chrome circle in the file on the file, and when I open it, it just goes directly to the web page.
Yeah. So yeah, it would do the same thing with me too, because depending on if you're on a Mac or a PC, once you have that .html format, the computer that you're working on is already identifying that as a web page. And if you have Chrome as your default browser, that's going to be the icon that you see depending on how you look at it. So if I go, I think that might be like a Windows thing. Are you on a Windows machine or a Mac?
PC, yeah, window.
Yeah, I think it's a Windows thing where you'll see this big Chrome icon.
Yes.
You just want to, if you want to go back in the brackets, just go back into brackets and open the file through brackets. So just go into brackets, go to file, go to open, and just find that HTML. Even if you look on the Mac, it does the same thing kind of. It's just the Windows operating system is giving you a different way to see it. So if I go into my desktop here, go into that banner project, and actually it's not showing it there, but it's kind of tiny. But if let me make it a little bit bigger. It's funny. It's like it shows it when it's the icon small. When it's big, you can't see it. But there is a little Chrome icon on that as well. The other thing you can do is just right-click on index.html and go to open with, and brackets should show up. But yeah, if you just double-click on it and it's an HTML file, it's going to open up in Chrome. It's opening up in the web page.
Okay.
But that's kind of what it's supposed to do, because it sees it as a web page, which is good. You just want to be able to change the code, and that's why you want to right-click on it and choose brackets or open it through brackets.
How did you bring in your template into bracket?
Did you see how I did that so quickly?
No.
So I'm using something, I'll talk about this soon as well. So there's a nice extension called Emmet, which is really cool. Oh, James left, so he probably heard of Emmet. So Emmet is basically a bunch of like preset codes. And then to install Emmet, you go into the little Lego piece and you just search for Emmet. And you see I have it installed here. You search for it and then you click install. And then it will install. And they'll have a menu in brackets called Emmet. So one of the preset codes, and the way it works is you type a tag. If I type P and they hit tab, it creates a P tag for me. And I don't even have to create the opening and closing tag for that. So it's nice. So I can type, you can use like a plus sign too. And I don't remember all the tricks for this, but if I say like H1 plus P and hit tab, it creates them in order. So for example, for your website, for this project, I'm kind of asking for an H1 tag, then an H2 tag, then a P tag, then an image tag, and then I'm kind of repeating it 4 times because there's 4 banners. So if I'll cut and paste this, and that's the last one, and then hit tab, and those are all my tags already in order. And it actually gives me the SRC for the image tag, and I just have to go in here. You know, this is the banner project, you know, and I can go through, this is banner 1 for the, you know, banner 1, you know, and for the P tag, this is a, you know, 600. This is the P description that you asked me about earlier. So you can just make something up for social media, you know, for the company, timeless cosplay. So yeah, that's kind of like the structure right there. But I used Emmet to do that. So that the trick was. So when you saw me do it earlier, I just type an exclamation point. So in Emmet, the so in Emmet, the exclamation point is the code for the whole boilerplate. So if I type an exclamation point and then hit tab, oops, I'm not in Emmet. Oops, it creates my whole boilerplate for me, which is really it's super convenient. And then I can go back in here and do my add all those other tags, and there you go. So it's like that is kind of like the template for the website that I'm asking for the banners. So that's pretty cool. Then there's a whole list of recipes that you can get into, so you can quickly code out a site just by knowing these little shortcuts.
That's great. Thank you.
So yeah, it's kind of a neat little thing to learn. I'll talk about it more as we get into CSS, because it's a quick way to create your code without having to type out everything. And every single IDE has Emmet, like Atom and Sublime and all these other IDEs. So yeah, so that was it. So I just quickly created the boilerplate. So any other questions then? So yeah, that's all I want to talk about then for tonight. So you just have to work on finishing assignment 3, and then on Monday I'll have the new module set up, and we'll start to go over fonts and typography, and really start to introduce you to CSS. Not get into too much detail, but kind of slowly bring you into it. And that's it. So that's all I want to talk about, really. Any questions? Anything else?
So the lightning bolt, when it's orange, I mean, it didn't save yet, right?
When it has a little dot, it means you need to save.
Okay.
So yeah, I haven't saved anything here. If I type something, that H1, I hit save, the little dot goes away. So that tells me that the document's saved. So when I click on that lightning bolt, it will show me the most recent changes. And when I go back, then I make another change, the dot reappears because I haven't saved it yet. So the dot is just saying, please save, so you can see the most recent version.
When I try to add the closing HTML at the bottom, it's like red.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. When you see red, that's an indication that there's something wrong. And so usually that happens because something is just missing. So like if part of that tag, the greater than symbol is missing, everything after that's going to be red because I have an error somewhere. So usually the easiest way is just look at the word that's in red, the tag that's in red, and most likely the thing that comes right before it is what's causing the mistake.
Got it. Okay.
You just got to figure that out, because it could be anything. It's not telling you what the mistake is, but it's saying that there's something that's not right.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. Someday it will actually tell you what the mistake is and be smart enough, but not yet. So yeah, just look for the red and just look for the thing right before it. It's all sorts of things, like people add like a character by mistake, or they forget closing tag, so it can be just about anything. That actually doesn't do it. But it's usually when you don't finish your tags, you're missing like greater than or less than symbol. It's pretty common.
Got it. Thank you. I was wondering why.
Yeah, that's going to be the most common thing that you're going to come across. But that's what's great about using like something like brackets is that it does give you a little indication to help you out. And that's the great thing about using IDEs because they do have these little helper color coding tools in there that like kind of gets you in the right direction. So just always kind of be paying attention to that, like trying to look and see that. But that's going to be the most frustrating thing is you're going to be off by a little bit and you just got to figure that out. So, you know, in time you'll get used to it. But just pay attention to that. So yeah. So any other questions then? So okay, so I'm gonna sign off then for now, and then I will have this video ready in the next day or two. So I think this will be a good one to watch. Hey, you guys been watching any of the other videos I've been putting up there?
Yep.
Because I've been putting up a lot of videos. So
Oh, you accidentally private messaged me again instead of the entire chat.
that private message, what happened?
So on the chat, you said any browser is fine, but you said it to me privately instead of everyone.
Oh, you wanted me to say it to everyone?
Oh, well, because I wasn't the one who was asking the question.
Oh, who asked the question?
Marie. And
Oh,
yeah, and the
okay.
private
So
was someone.
sorry. So yeah, you can use any so I prefer Chrome. And you're just talking, Chrome is good because of the Chrome developer tools. So in terms of browsers though, I'd say it doesn't really matter. You know, Firefox is a good one too. Chrome and Firefox are actually pretty good because of the developer tools. And we'll look into that as we work on these projects. You know, if you click on your three dots here in Chrome, you go down into more tools, and then you go down to developer tools, and it gives you all this information about the code. So it's actually showing you the code, and then when you highlight over the code, it's actually showing you the equivalent visually on what you see in the browser when you highlight over it. And there's some other things in here too, but a lot of it, it's more helpful when you're actually using JavaScript. So so we won't really be needing to use a lot of this. Another nice tool though is this responsive design tool, so you can see what your website will look like on a phone, different sizes. So it actually gives you a bunch of phones and devices here. So that's another good tool as well. But you know, I don't have a preference, but when I do it, I'm going to be looking at using Chrome most of the time. So I use Chrome. So yeah. So anything else? So yeah, just go ahead and keep on working on the banners. You know, send me a message in brackets. I'm sorry, in Discord. And let's see. Yeah, and if you have any questions, I mean, Discord is going to be the fastest thing for me to answer your questions because I'm always there. You know, if you notice, I'm always on Discord. Like I'm always doing something on the computer, so I'm always around. So just, you know, reach out to me if you need help with anything. But yeah, other than that, then I'm gonna sign off. So that's it.